Hello and welcome to Tap That MTG, the show where we tell you everything we know about Magic the Gathering. That is sometimes wrong, but it's fun to talk about anyway.
It might be a little more wrong this time, you
Oh,
guys.
no, we got this. I'm Leslie.
And I'm
I
Shauna.
almost called myself Sean again. Today, we are going to talk to you. We're doing another Prepper's Guide to Rotation. We have Throne of Eldraine coming out. Spoilers have already started. Most of the stuff that we've seen so far has been Planeswalker decks and Brawl decks that have been spoiled, but a lot of those cards are going to be in packs as well. But yeah, so we have some cards coming out, and today we're going to talk about Esper Control.
Yes.
We're going to break it down, talk about what the deck does if you haven't played it before, what the deck is supposed to do, what cards are in it, what's leaving, what's staying, and what's currently being used to kind of make it rotation proof, and what to watch for when the new set comes out.
Yep.
There's only been a few cards released so far that we've seen that would be even worth considering for this deck, but I think all in all, the deck is going to be just fine. There's a lot of stuff that's staying as is, and so it's not going to need a lot of tweaking.
No.
If you're wanting to get into a deck before rotation, this is probably the one to get into because it's going to be just fine. Yeah. There's a few janky things happening, I think knights and stuff like that. That'll be good, but why don't you tell us a little bit about Esper Control, what it's supposed to do?
Esper Control is basically all about controlling that other person, the other player, and what I mean controlling is basically not letting them play anything. So they get their creatures out, you get rid of them. You get rid of stuff in their hand. Just keep control of the game until you can build up to where you need to be so that you can finish off the game. So you just control the game, basically.
So how do you finish off this game? What is the finishing move?
There's a couple different win conditions in here. One of them is Big Teferi and his ultimate, which is basically get rid of absolutely everything that person has, and you just win the game.
Yeah.
And the other ones that I've seen is where they get their big, like the Kefnet out, or they steal your creatures and kill you with your own creatures. So
how do they kill you with your own creatures? Which cards?
You'll see this card when we
we're going to talk about them as we go through.
Yes.
That keeps people staying longer. I like it. I like it a lot.
I'll show you those cards.
So let's talk a little bit about what's in this deck.
Yes. So the biggest thing about this deck is you have to have the good lands. It's really, really important because it is a 3-color deck.
Yeah.
Black, blue, and white. So you need those expensive lands. So the ones like Drowned Catacomb, Glacial Fortress, and Isolated Chapel, where they tap for either of those colors, those 3 colors. Then there's also the, let me continue on.
Whatever.
Sure. There's the ones that you pay life for. So Godless Shrine, Hallowed Fountain, you pay a life for those, and they again get to be one of those 3 colors. There's Temple of Silence as well, and a Watery Grave is also a paying life one, but Temple of Silence scries when it comes into.
Yeah, and I would agree. It's really important. Now, the cards that we're describing here or that we're talking about, they're not necessarily in every deck. There's different variations depending on who you are and what you like to play. So we've pulled some of the cards out of all the different top 8 decks and just to kind of give you a variation of what people are playing, as well as some variations based on what's rotating and what's not rotating and what people have done. So as far as creatures go in this deck, there aren't a lot of creatures. This is not a creature-based deck, which is why Sean and I don't play it very often, just because we tend to be more creature lovers. And it's also why we hate this deck, because it hates creatures. But there are some important creatures in this deck. The first one being Basilica Bellhaunt. It is 2 white and 2 black for a creature spirit. That's a 3/4. And when it enters the battlefield, each opponent discards a card, and you gain 3 life. So that life gain is going to become a little bit important a little bit later when we're talking about it. And just being able to draw cards, super important in this deck to be able to have the card draw, to get the cards you need in your hand, and making them get rid of their stuff in whatever way, shape, or form that's possible. So.
And then the next one that's kind of one of their game winners is God Eternal Kefnet for 2 and 2 blue. Legendary zombie god with 4/5 flyer, and you may reveal the first card you draw each turn as you draw it. Whenever you reveal an instant or sorcery card this way, which there are lots of, copy that card and you may cast the copy. That copy costs 2 less to cast. So that's extremely important in this deck, and happens a lot more than you would like if you're playing against it. When it dies or is put into the exile, you can put it into its owner's library, third from the top. So it just never goes away.
Yeah. And it's like 4 mana cost for a 4/5 flyer.
Yeah.
In and of itself.
By itself is
with
awesome.
all the stuff. And then it's unkillable. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's legendary creature. So when you're deciding how many to put into your deck, how many do you usually put with legendaries?
With legendary, you don't usually want to have a full set in there. So 2, maybe 3 if you're pushing it, but 2 probably.
Depends on how often you want to pull it. If you're like, yeah, no, this is going to be more of my win condition than you
Depends how
want
much card draw you have.
Yeah. Because if you don't want them sitting in your hand just because, right? So Deputy of Detention is not a legendary, so you can play with 4, and you should probably play with 4 of these. 1, a white and a blue for a wizard, 1/3, and when it enters the battlefield, you can exile target non-land permanent an opponent controls, and all other non-land permanents that player controls with the same name as that permanent until Deputy Detention leaves the battlefield. So he basically just sucks them all to him and keeps them until you get rid of him. He's only 1/3. He can be a little bit susceptible to lightning strikes and those types of things. But, and I think Red Deck Wins tends to do well against Esper control if it can get out there really fast anyway. But creature decks have a hard time with this Deputy of Detention.
Yeah, even you get all those tokens out, they all disappear.
Yeah.
Saplings or whatever.
Not annoying at all.
No. Elite Guard Mage for 2, a white and a blue. It's a 2/3 flyer, and when it enters the battlefield, you gain 3 life and draw a card. So there's your life gain and card draw. It is an excellent, excellent card for this deck. And pretty much you want 4 in there, and I see it often.
Yeah. And then we have like a little bit of a variation that we're seeing. It's technically called Esper Hero as a deck, but a lot of the same cards are played in both decks. So Hero, the Precinct 1 is why it's called Esper Hero. And whenever you cast a multicolor spell, create a 1/1 white human creature token. It's a 2/2 for 2 when it comes in, but this deck has so many multicolor spells, and every time you play one, you get a little 1/1 white human. So I mean, board wipes kill your guys as well, but if you've decided to kind of go with a more aggressive creature base, then Esper Hero is something that people are playing with as well.
Another one that has popped up quite a bit since M20 came out is the Tome-Bound Lich for 1 blue and a black. It's a 1/3 Death Touch Lifelinker dude, and he is whenever he enters the battlefield or deals combat damage to a player, draw a card, then discard a card. So it just helps with that whole getting to your Kefnet or getting to your Big Teferi or getting to that key card and keeping you alive. The process. Yeah.
So what we see a lot more of in this deck are our instants and sorceries. There's a lot of them, and most of them have to do with just killing everything and getting rid of everybody's cards. So cast down, destroy target non-legendary creature.
Just does its job.
Yep.
Command the Dreadhorde is a pretty important card to this deck. So for 4 and 2 black, it is a sorcery, and you can choose any number of target creature and or planeswalker cards in graveyards. Command the Dreadhorde deals damage to you equal to the total converted mana cost of those cards. Put them onto the battlefield under your control. So this is one of their win conditions. They use your stuff, they reuse their stuff, and suddenly you've got a whole bunch of stuff on their side, and
or one of your win conditions if you're
one of your win conditions is on their side.
One of ours when we decide to play this because it's time.
They do have to pay life for it, and that's why this life gain is important.
Yeah. 2 board wipes that we see in this deck are Cry of the Crinarium, which ultimately costs 1 and 2 black, and it gives all creatures -2/-2 until the end of turn, which is great if they have indestructible, like the little white blue-white flyers, because the -2 just gives the -2, and they're not protected from that. It's all creatures though, so it does kill yours. And Kaya's Wrath, destroy all creatures. You gain life equal to the number of creatures you control that are destroyed this way. So if you have Hero of the Precinct 1 and you destroy all those creatures, you're gaining life. Then we go back to command the Dread Horde, and now we have lots of life to pay to steal all their creatures and just swing in with them.
Yep.
So
a Legion's End is a simple little, for 1 and a black, a sorcery that you exile a target creature an opponent controls with power, with converted mana cost 2 or less, and all other creatures that player controls with the same name as that creature. So you do get to see in their hand. That player reveals their hand and exiles all cards with that name from their hand and graveyard. So it's again that getting rid of a whole bunch of cards potentially at once.
Mortify, another just great straight up removal. 1, a white and a black for an instant that says destroy target creature or enchantment. It's nice to get that enchantment removal in there as well.
Another big card that's more of a sideboard card because you want to make sure that you actually play against someone who has planeswalkers. Though I have seen people use this against themselves, but the Elder Spell is for 2 black and destroy any number of target planeswalkers. Choose a planeswalker you control, put 2 loyalty counters on it for each planeswalker destroyed this way.
Wait, what? They use it against themselves?
Yes.
Why?
So you have a Kaya and you have the baby Teferi and the big Teferi. Once you've used your Kaya and your little Teferi, you kill them and take their loyalty counters and put it on big Teferi, and suddenly you've ultimated big Teferi.
That's really smart.
Annoying.
I appreciate all you Esper control players that are smart enough to think of this. Thought Erasure. Love this card. It is a blue and a black. It's a sorcery. Basically, target opponent reveals their hand. You choose a non-land card from it, and that player discards that card, and you get to surveil one.
Yep.
People will hate you, and you'll be happy because you're playing Esper.
Yep. And Dovin's Veto is usually a sideboard card as well because it is for 1 white and a blue. It's an instant that it's a spell that can't be countered, and you counter a target non-creature spell. So you have to be playing against someone who uses lots of non-creature spells.
Yeah.
So that's why it's sideboard.
Yeah. Despark, exile target permanent with converted mana cost 4 or greater. Another probably sideboard card. You don't know what they're playing yet. You don't know if you need that. You'd hate to have it in your hand, and there's better removal that you can have in your hand. So this is more of a sideboard card that you bring in, but great little card.
And Enter the God Eternals for 2 and 2 blue and a black. It's a sorcery where Enter the God Eternals deals 4 damage to target creature, and you gain life equal to the damage dealt this way. And target player puts the top 4 cards of their library into their graveyard and amass 4. So suddenly you've got a big zombie army.
Tyrant Scorn came out at the same time. It's choose 1, so it's a little versatile. Destroy target creature with converted mana costs of 3 or less, or return target creature to its owner's hand. So that can be a token, which gets rid of their big thing as well, but
it's an instant.
Tricky. Other cards.
What are
the I think the other cards are kind of the main components of this deck as well. So
yeah. So Karn, Scion of Urza for 4. It's a 5 loyalty planeswalker, and he lets you, for his +1, you reveal the top 2 cards of your library, and an opponent chooses one of them. Put that card into your hand, and then exile the other with a silver counter on it. -1 lets you put a card you own with a silver counter on it from exile into your hand. And -2 is create a 0/0 colorless construct artifact creature token. With this creature gets +1/+1 for each artifact you control. So he's mostly just for getting the cards you need. And then later on, hopefully getting some constructs.
Getting the cards you need is also the goal of Search for Azcanta.
Indeed.
The beginning of your upkeep, you get to look at the top card of your library, and then you can put that card into your graveyard if you don't want it, or you can have And then when you have 7 or more cards in your graveyard, then you can transform, search for Azcanta. When you flip it over, basically you can just tap it, look at the top 4 cards of your library, decide what you want. Like,
yeah,
really powerful for flipping through your deck and getting what you're wanting.
It's a very big key component. And the next one is Teferi, Hero of Dominaria. It's the big Teferi, we call him, for 3 and a white
Big
and
T.
a blue. He's a 4 mana planeswalker and +1, draw a card. At the beginning of your end step, untap 2 lands. And -3
powerful.
is put target non-land permanent into its owner's library, 3rd from the top. You can do that to yourself as well. And his ultimate is -8. You get an emblem with whenever you draw a card, exile target permanent and opponent controls.
So for the past year, this has been the main win condition of this deck. You just keep them under control until you get your Teferi out, and then once your Teferi is out, you just constantly get rid of all their cards and board wipe and counter their spells and all that kind of stuff. There's not a lot of counter spells in this anymore.
No.
So that's interesting.
Yeah.
Bolus's Citadel, 3 and 3 black, so it's a little expensive, but you look at the top card of your library at any time, and you may play the top card of your library. If you cast the spell this way, pay life equal to its converted mana cost rather than paying its mana cost. So if you have lots of life, you're fine. You can just pay life, and then you can tap it, sacrifice it, or sacrifice 10 non-land permanents, and each opponent loses 10 life.
Yep.
So really quick way to just take them down.
Yes. Oath of Kaya.
Especially if you've stolen all of their stuff.
Yeah.
And then you can just sacrifice their
sacrifice them all. You can sacrifice your lands.
Or your heroes.
Whatever, it doesn't matter.
Your little heroes.
Oath of Kaya for 1 white and a black. It's a legendary enchantment. And when it enters the battlefield, it deals 3 damage to any target and you gain 3 life gain, and removal. Whenever an opponent attacks a planeswalker you control with 1 or more creatures, Oath of Kaya deals 2 damage to that player and you gain 2 life. Mm-hmm. You can only have one of those out at a time, though, because it's legendary.
And we have Little T.
Little T.
Teferi Time Reveler. This one has the static ability. Each opponent can't cast spells, or can cast spells only when they could cast a sorcery. So it gets rid of all their instants, which is great against red deck wins. And then his +1 is until your next turn, you may cast sorcery spells as though they had flash. So you can cast your sorceries at instant speed. -3, return up to 1 target artifact, creature, or enchantment to its owner's hand and draw a card. Most of the time when I see this, I see it used for that.
Yeah.
Just to get rid of something that you have that they don't want to see. The rest of the stuff is just kind of a bonus if you can get it. But they're using it for removal, and then they just +1 it again until they have to.
And then Narset, Parter of Veils for 1 and 2 blue. It's a 5 mana planeswalker, again for more of the spark, that each opponent can't draw more than 1 card each turn, which really hurts them. And -2, look at the top 4 cards of your library. You may reveal a non-creature, non-land from among them and put it in your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. So that card draw and hampering their card draw. Is what her job is.
Yep. So now you know what's in the deck, kind of what it's supposed to do. What's leaving out of this deck. Why don't I do what's leaving and you can do what's staying?
Sure.
Sounds good. Okay, so for land, we have Drowned Catacombs, Glacial Fortress, and Isolated Chapel. It's all of our unless lands that are leaving us. Those are really, the land base, like we said, is really important in this deck, so that's going to hurt this deck. Cast Down, it's a nice little removal. There's going to be something that can replace Cast Down, so I'm not too worried about that. Karn, Scion of Urza, however, is one of those really important cards for getting cards in your hand that you really need and kind of keeping it going. Search for Azcanta is going to hurt a lot with this deck because just being able to grab what you want when you want it is so powerful with this deck. So the fact that that's leaving is going to be really hurtful. And then the last one is Teferi, Hero of Dominaria. And he isn't being played, like we said, his -8 isn't being played as much as a win condition. It's definitely a win condition, but people have already kind of started to say, well, he's leaving. How can we make this deck into a better deck without having to rely so much on Big T? But that being said, he is still a really powerful card in this deck. So losing him will leave a hole in many people's hearts. Poor Big T.
They think he might be coming back in a future set.
Yes, well,
they hope.
We'll see.
They hope.
He might be coming back, but it won't be exactly as that. They won't put him back in exactly as that. What are we left with?
We're still left with quite a few.
So let's hear it.
A lot. We're left with those shock lands. We're definitely left with those. We're also left with the Temple of Silence.
Let people know what the shock lands are.
Shock lands, sorry, are the ones that they enter the battlefield. You may pay 2 life, and then it doesn't enter tapped. So Godless Shrine, Hallowed Fountain, and Watery Grave. And Temple of Silence stays in, and it is the one where you get, when it comes in, you can scry. You also still have your Basilica Bellhaunt, God Eternal Kefnet. You have all those creatures that we talked about pretty much. Deputy of Detention, Elite Guard Mage, the Hero if you're playing that version of it, the Tomebound Lich, and you still have a lot of your sorceries like Command the Dreadhorde, which is really important, Cry of the Carnarium, Kaya's Wrath, Legion's End is a new card, Mortify, Elder Spell, Thought Erasure, Donnie.
Good old Donnie.
Dovin's Veto, D-Spark, Enter the God Eternals, Tyrant Scorn. You still have Bolas's Citadel, Narset, Oath of Kaya, and Baby Teferi. So you still have a ton of cards still.
You're fine.
Yeah.
You don't need to worry.
No worries. And there's going to be more in the new set.
Yeah.
For sure.
So, I mean, what do we currently have that we can either, we've already seen people starting to use, or that we think might replace? We're losing a lot of card draw. A lot like Search for Azcanta. Yep. We're losing kind of the draw cards with Teferi being able to draw a card, and then untap 2 lands. Karn being able to choose. So really, it's card draw and kind of controlling what you're pulling that we're missing. So is there anything currently in sets that we can maybe put in to tide us over until we get things going, or other cards that fit?
Well, one thing that we were thinking about for card draw anyways, and a little bit of life gain as well, is Dovin, Architect of Law. He's a planeswalker for 4 white and a blue, so it's a little bit expensive, but his +1 is you gain 2 life and draw a card.
Which helps with Bolas's, or the Citadel as well, right?
Yeah. And its -1 is tap target creature. It doesn't untap during its controller's next untap step, so you're controlling them a little bit too. And then the -9 on that one is tap all permanents target opponent controls. That player skips their next untap step. So there's where you get in there for that final swing and kill them. So
also there's not a lot of, we talked about counter spells that are currently in, and you might need more of that if you don't have the cards in your hand that you need. So maybe putting something like Absorb in there where you can counter target spell and gain 3 life. Again, you got some life gain in there. It only costs 3 at a white and 2 blue. So that definitely is something you could use.
Yeah. Erratic Visionary is a little creature, 1 and a 3. I'm seeing it more often. It's for 1 and a blue. And he can also, you pay 1 in a blue and you can tap him and draw a card, then discard a card. Yeah. So again, that really helps with that.
And it's just constant, right? You can just keep using him over and over again. So that's a nice, for Search for Azcanta, not quite as good, but maybe will help a little. Soul Diviner, for a blue and a black. It's a zombie, 2/3, but you can tap it and remove a counter from an artifact, creature, land, or planeswalker you control to draw a card. So maybe there's one of those planeswalkers that you don't really need its ability, or you've stolen some stuff from someone's, some counters from someone's planeswalker because you've killed their planeswalker, and now you have some extras that you can deal with.
You might have a zombie that you can use, or something like that.
The Amass.
Yeah. So Spectral Sailor, that's a really good little card draw engine and a flyer. He's for one little 1/1 flyer that has flash, so you sneak him in there all of a sudden, and then you can pay 3 and a blue to draw a card at any time. So that's really handy. I've drawn lots of cards with him.
Yeah. And you'd think 3 and a blue would be, oh, that's pretty expensive, and he's pretty weak. So that can happen for sure, but I've actually been able to draw quite a few cards. People kind of ignore them.
Yeah. Until you start drawing lots of cards and they're like, I gotta get rid of that guy.
Yeah. And the only one we've really seen so far in Throne of Eldraine that's been released to the date that we're filming this is Tomb Raider for 2 and a blue. It's a fairy, and when it enters the battlefield, you get to draw a card. So not great yet, but again, I think they're coming. Real spoiler season starts on the 9th, so tomorrow we'll start getting lots of cards being released that are going to, I think, affect some of these a little bit more. But that gives you a little bit of insight into what to watch for. Hopefully you can, if you haven't created this deck, I think that it's a viable thing to create. You don't have to do it the same way everyone else is doing it, and we encourage you to kind of try your own thing and see how it goes, and then tweak it and see what else is out there, because you know, it's like when you play poker and you're that person that just does some random thing because you don't know how to play. It's not that we don't think you don't know how to play, but sometimes playing that card is a good thing because they don't know how to deal with it because you're doing something different, completely different than what they're used to seeing on the net. So they think you're playing Esper Control, but you're not quite.
You tweaked it in your own little way.
Yes.
This is a good deck for doing that kind of playing around.
Yeah.
Seeing what works, what doesn't work.
Yeah.
Because you got time.
You gonna make it?
I probably will. I enjoyed playing Esper Hero, actually. It was kind of fun to play because there was still some creatures in there, but also a bunch of counter spells and stuff like that. So it was kind of fun to mess with people a little bit.
I don't call myself a control player, but I have played control before, and I actually really liked it. I think that's why I stopped playing it, because I'm kind of evil control player, and I revel in it way too much. I'm one of those, griefers. I think I'm a griefer.
I do have on our Tap That account, I do have a black and blue, so it's just missing the white deck that does really well because I steal people's creatures all the time.
Stop stealing my stuff!
It's terrible. That's, yeah.
Well,
we're losing that pirate.
Ultimately, we just want you to have fun, so we hope that you do, and in the meantime, we're going to tap those magic cards and have fun doing it. We'll see you later, guys.